When the Game Boy launched in 1989, it revolutionized gaming. For the first time, you could game on the go and no longer have to look out the window on those endless car drives. Launching with the forever addictive game Tetris, the Game Boy was an instant hit and would eventually go on to sell more than 100 million units. So naturally, with the Game Boy being such an enormous success, game companies made it their personal mission to get their best IPs over to the system. Many times these pre-established franchises end up being a watered-down version of the NES home releases, but sometimes companies create their best version of the series on the Game Boy. Regardless though, fans of the series were always excited to see what the developers had in store for gaming on the go. And in the 90s, there was no greater fan base out there than fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The NES and the arcade turtle games were major successes, so naturally, TMNT was destined for the Game Boy as well. A total of 3 titles came out on the Game Boy: Fall of the Foot Clan, Back from the Sewers, and Radical Rescue, and surprisingly, all of these have aged exceptionally well. However, anytime you have a series of games like this, you will inevitably have one that shines brighter than the rest. So today, let's break down and rank all of the TMNT games on the Game Boy. But before we dive too far into that, welcome to the Ogle's channel. Thanks so much for watching today. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure and click the subscribe button down below for your latest in gaming news, reviews, content, and a lot of turtle stuff here lately as well. But let's get back to ranking the 3 TMNT games on the Game Boy. In third place, we have Back from the Sewers, and even though I'm putting this game in last place, I loved it as a kid and I still have fun playing it even to this day. It took the beat-em-up style from the first Turtles Game Boy game and attempted to improve upon it by implementing features from the NES Turtles arcade game. By doing so, they pushed what the Game Boy could even do at the time, with adding in cutscenes, character animations, and even being in 2.5D on several occasions. This game really does attempt to get everything out of the Game Boy hardware that it can. However, this is also where the game begins to falter just a bit. The controlling for this game is nowhere near as smooth as any of the other Turtle games at the time. This is most true in the 2.5D portions of the game, where all the hitboxes seem to be a little bit too large for the sprites on both the enemies and your character. While graphically impressive, the skateboarding, surfing, and elevator portions of this game that utilize that 2.5D graphics, they often come off feeling unfair and just annoying. Also, by attempting to lift ideas from the arcade game, the game feels more like a cheap knockoff of the arcade versus just simply being its own creation. They stole some of the level designs, jokes, enemies, and difficulty directly from the NES arcade game. The NES game was, for the vast majority of players, especially kids, way too difficult to finish, and this game follows in that line. As an adult, I can finish the game just fine, but mainly because I know how to exploit all the bosses. Without the exploits though, this game is brutal in the later stages and the vast majority of kids will never finish this game. While these are the core reasons that the game is in last place with the 3, let's talk about what the game does right. First off, giving players the most advanced graphical experience at the time is the most notable plus. The sprites are all huge, easy to see, and oftentimes amazing how detailed they really are for the game. Just look at the animations on even the small things like how the turtles are jumping right here. The backgrounds look phenomenal and you can tell the developers tried their absolute best to make this game look great. Except when doing these kick jumps. Like, what even is that? Even as a kid, I was annoyed by how awful the kick animations looked in this game. The game also implemented a new idea into the arcade formula, which was when you die, your turtle is just captured, and to close that level, you can fight against a robot jailer to rescue your brother. The battle is actually really hard though, and I rarely ever get my lost turtles back, but it's still a cool feature nonetheless. The variety of enemies and bosses in this game is excellent as well. They knew their source material and tried their best to appease the fans. I mean, we even got the pizza killers in this game, one of the most iconic enemies of the Turtles. I still remember watching this episode as a kid and absolutely loving it, so seeing them in the game, amazing. Overall, this game attempts to bring too many elements of the NES arcade release over to the Game Boy, and while doing so, they ended up making this particular entry feeling somewhat formulaic and sort of weak. Yes, it has some awesome graphics, fan service, and is still an overall fun game, but compared to the other games in this ranking, it tends to fall a bit short. In second place, we have Fall of the Foot Clan, and I have to admit, I love this game. This was the first TMNT game released on the Game Boy, and it came out at a time before they knew the arcade game was such a hit. That being said, they crafted a fun and unique beat-em-up side-scroller that was far from just a rip-off of the arcade game. This game only has 5 levels and each one feels completely unique and has its own fun and wacky direction. Like being able to go underwater and fighting off piranhas, or fighting little hothead flame characters that hop out of the lava. Little touches like this made the game feel like its own creation, and that the developers made a TMNT game that they wanted to make, rather than try to cater to what they felt would bring in the most dollars. The graphics for this game, while not quite as impressive as Back from the Sewers, I actually prefer them. They are simpler, yes, however they come off looking a little less awkward than Back from the Sewers sometimes did, except for that stupid jump kick. This was the game that actually started all when it comes to that, and I once again have no idea why this was the animation direction that they went with that. This game also stays in pure 2D the entire time, and that is a great decision because it handles flawlessly. Never once did I die without knowing it was 100% my own fault. All the core enemies are here in this game as well, but it would have been nice if they could have thrown in a few more mini bosses for a little extra fan service along the way. This game is the shortest game on the list, taking less than 30 minutes from start to finish, and it's also the easiest. However, during that 30 minutes, you will have some of the most fun Turtles action that you can have. In first place, we have Radical Rescue, and this is one of the most unique Turtles games on any system to date. Over the years, the vast majority of Turtles games have all fallen into the beat-em-ups category. However, this is the only Turtles game that is a Metroidvania. And not only that, it was created at a time when the only real Metroidvanias out there were either Metroid or Castlevania games. You start the game off with just Michelangelo and you travel through a cascade of underground tunnels searching for your brothers to rescue. As you rescue your brothers, you can then swap between them, and each one has their own power that allows you to traverse the landscape to areas that were previously off limits. For example, Raphael can pull himself into his shell and slide through tight spots. Donatello can use his bow to climb walls, Michelangelo can swing his nunchucks like a helicopter to float around, and Leonardo can just simply drill holes into the ground with his katanas. This is a very clever way to put the Turtles into a Metroidvania style game, and it's extremely fluid. To rescue each turtle, you must find a key, and the keys are earned by defeating a boss within the area. The bosses for this game are great as well, because they actually chose villains that are not the run-the-mill ones like Bebop and Rocksteady. They're in all the games, but they went with enemies like Dirtbag, Scaletail, Triceraton, and even Scratch. That's right, the most rare and expensive Ninja Turtle action figure out there is in this game. This is his only appearance in TMNT media, and it's just great to see him in action. But by not choosing the same old bosses from any of the other games, it just makes this game all the more unique. As you are progressing, defeating bosses and freeing turtles, you must also be on the lookout for key cards to open new doors, hearts to expand your life meter, and pizzas to heal you. It's just so refreshing to have a Turtles game that's not just a standard beat 'em ups, where you have to actually collect items, have unique gameplay, and just an overall great platforming experience. This game feels more like an actual adventure than probably any Turtles game that's out there. The graphics for this game are also excellent. The sprites are just as vivid as the other two entries, and they fixed the jump kick. I mean, just look at it. It's all its glory. The old one is finally gone. Now, the only main drawback of this game is that the boss fights can get a little bit difficult as you progress. However, with a password system in place, you can try these bosses as many times as you need to, and you can actually learn their patterns to defeat them. Overall, this TMNT game should be in everyone's collection. It is not just a great Game Boy game, but it's just simply a great video game in general. So there we have it, the ranking of the TMNT Game Boy games. There are great aspects to every single game on this list, and while the first two games are very similar in gameplay, the third one blazed its own trail as one of the most unique games at the time. But how do my rankings line up with your rankings? Which TMNT Game Boy game would you put at the top of the list? Which one at the bottom? Let me know in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, go out there, find a great game to play, and just simply have a great rest of the day.